Hi, thank you, Justine. I'm Charlotte. I'm the CEO at Headway Nottingham, and my colleague is Rhiana, if you want to say hello.
Hello, I'm Rhiana. Good to see you.
So I'm just going to share my screen with you all and get things sorted. Right, well, we've already introduced ourselves, so we will crack on. And as Justine already said, if you've got comments, feel free to put them in the chat, and any questions as well, feel free to type away during the presentation as and when they come to you. Do keep yourself on mute if at all possible. Just the background noise can be quite distracting, not only for me but for other people on the call. And in terms of our kind of learning outcomes for today, we hope that you will watch today's presentation and come away with an improved understanding of the ways brain injury can present in individuals, understand a little more about how Headway Nottingham helps the brain injury community, be better able to empathise with those that are living with brain injury related disability, understand the impact that has on individuals and on their support networks and families, and also hopefully gain a few tips here and there to kind of bolster your knowledge around working with those that have brain injury. So I suppose the first question is, what is brain injury? It's often split into two categories of brain injury. You might hear the acronym TBI, that stands for traumatic brain injury, and you might hear ABI, which is acquired brain injury. So TBIs tend to be the ones that everyone automatically thinks of when you talk about brain injury. They're the ones that result from road traffic accidents, from a fall or an assault, and they're the ones we most often associate with the term brain injury. But that isn't the only type of brain injury there is. The ones that have traditionally been called ABIs, or acquired brain injuries, are those that result from illnesses or medical events, so strokes, brain tumours, infections like meningitis and encephalitis, aneurysms, or lack of oxygen after a cardiac arrest, strangulation, or near drowning. So when you think about the amount of brain injuries and the varied amount of brain injuries there are, it's more than likely that you will know someone that has been affected in some way by a brain injury. And there is now a movement towards referring to all brain injuries as acquired brain injuries, rather than splitting them down into the traumatic and acquired types. And how often does it happen? Every 90 seconds in the UK, somebody is admitted to hospital with a brain injury. That's quite startling, actually, because it's more often than someone is diagnosed with cancer in the UK. I think most people find that quite a shocking statistic when they're faced with it. Right. You probably, if you don't already know who we are and what we do at Headway Nottingham, now's the time to find out. We have been going since 1996, and we cater for people that are struggling with brain injury related disability in Nottingham City and the county of Nottinghamshire. Our primary service is our day centre, where people come to us and come together to spend time with each other. But we're a non-clinical service, so we're not medical, we don't have clinical qualification. We are all about social, cognitive and behavioural rehabilitation, like a social rehabilitation and support system. Now, we support about 70 people each week in our day centre at the moment, and they come regularly, whether it be once, twice or three times a week. We will offer one-to-one support to those accessing the day centre with things like welfare and benefits, advice and advocacy, problem solving, crisis intervention, liaising with adult social care, and that kind of thing. We also have a timetable that's packed full of activities and workshops that are all aimed towards helping people that have had brain injuries to develop insight and understanding, to relearn lost skills, maybe, to find new talents and new likes and build confidence. What we really want to do is to help people to understand that although their life may have changed, it doesn't have to be of lesser value because of that. So anything we can do to help improve feelings of self-worth and well-being, that's the aim of the game for us. But we, alongside our work in the day centre, we also have a by the bedside project operating at the Queen's Medical Centre in Nottingham. So our staff members will go in once a week and spend time with the neurotrauma service at QMC, talking to individuals and their families from the intensive care unit right through into the neuro wards to deliver some of the soft skills that the staff at QMC would love to have the time to offer, but just can't. So a listening ear, some practical information about income, benefits, statutory sick pay, where they can find support and information, and a lot of the time just someone to talk to who understands. But the main point is that we're letting them know that there is support available at the earliest opportunity, so that as they move through their recovery journey, they know where to come to find the support they need. And we have newly developed a training course that's an 8-week training course that can be delivered in person or online for those people that might not be able to attend the day centre for one reason or another, and for those that perhaps aren't so severely impacted by disability after their brain injury, that don't need quite such an intensive support. And we're pleased to be taking bookings to register for that 8-week course about understanding your own brain injury. We are also an approved provider of specialised day services for both the Nottingham City Council and Nottinghamshire County Council. But the sum of what Headway Nottingham is, besides all those things, is really the people who use and work within it. And our lovely photo board there is just a little snapshot into the kinds of things we get up to here at Headway Nottingham.
It feels important to say, I think, we obviously, in the course of our endeavouring to find the funds that we need to run various projects and stuff like that, which I'm sure will resonate with a few people on the call, we talk about things in terms of outcomes, in terms of improved cognition, better dexterity, upper arm strength, or, task management skills and planning execution and task completion and able to empathise and all of those sorts of things. Those are the improvements we see in people. For some people slowly, but over time, those are the improvements we see. But whenever we have feedback sessions with our clients, the first thing that seems to come to mind when we say, give us 3 words to describe Headway Nottingham, the first one is always family or something along those lines. And I think what particularly our clients have struggled with a lot is that there's kind of there's a real isolation that happens. I'm sure Charlotte will nod along and agree with me. When someone's discharged from hospital, historically, there's been that drop off of support, and it's left people kind of really flailing and unsupported. And as you'll likely all know, that really exacerbates a lot of other problems that people are struggling with, and financial problems occur, families break down, etc. So just having that one space where people can come to Headway Nottingham, or they can talk to someone at Headway Nottingham, and they just have that sense that they're not alone in their journey. And that's so incredibly empowering. That can make such a difference in the first instance, and it's so motivating for people to move forward. So I mean, I could talk about Headway Nottingham all day, but I think we're an incredibly special place. So always worth bearing in mind. If you can spot that someone is really out on a limb and they're really struggling, always worth getting in touch with us. Even if you think they just need peer support, we can do that too.
Absolutely, we can. Thank you, Rhiana. So brain injury can affect pretty much everything, but what we'll go through now are some of the most common problems we see with people that are, living with disability after brain injury. So the kind of physical disabilities we see are paralysis or weakness, often on one side of the body. That's particularly for people that have had strokes, but not just those. Also, a lack of balance and coordination skills. That makes people much more high risk in terms of falls. It can lead to people when they're out in the community thinking that they're drunk, which isn't the case. And that in itself knocks their confidence about accessing their local community. And as Rhiana pointed out, can lead to isolation. Then we have things like the changes in sensations, like hearing, vision, smell, taste. Smell and taste, it doesn't sound like it would be that awful, actually, apart from it would be horrible not to be able to taste your grilled halloumi. But aside from that, if you can't smell or taste, you're at a very increased risk of not being able to spot if the food that you're taking out of the fridge has gone off or is out of date. We've all sniffed the milk, and we can tell immediately if we shouldn't be putting that into our coffee. People that have altered sense of smell don't have the ability to do that. Likewise, they might not be able to smell if there is gas escaping into their house. So it does put people at a heightened risk. We also see most frequently that people really struggle with extreme fatigue. It's not just feeling a bit tired, it's almost pathological. It's debilitating for people, and when someone is feeling that kind of extreme fatigue, it does make all of the other problems they have worse. So we do try and bear in mind that fatigue whenever we're working with anyone. People also struggle with physical sequencing and voluntary actions. So what that means is that even simple tasks, can be extremely difficult for someone with brain injury to complete. And the other thing very often seen is headaches, constant, very painful headaches that aren't always managed and controlled by traditional pain medication. So all of those things can make life pretty difficult for someone. I would like everyone on the call just to take a moment to think about what your most important memory is. It might be a wedding day, it might be the birth of a child, a graduation, all sorts of different things. Those memories you hold that kind of make you who you are. And now you've thought of that memory, think about what would happen if that completely disappeared for you. And that does happen quite often. The biggest problem for people after brain injury are memory problems. So that long-term memory loss, you often see it sensationalized on the front of Take a Break or Bella or one of those magazines. I woke up and didn't know who my family were. And as sensationalist as that might seem, it's not all that uncommon. And people do struggle to remember really important moments of their life. And more than that, and more difficult on a day-to-day living ordinary life level is short-term and working memory problems. So having to say the same thing or hear the same thing many times before you really can retain it, and being missing appointments, so and then getting struck off your dentist list because you can't remember that you were supposed to turn up, or forgetting medication that's vital to keep you well and healthy. People often have cognitive disabilities. These are the hidden ones. These are the ones that aren't obvious. And on the face of it, pretty much everyone we support in the centre looks to be perfectly well from the outside. But what we're not seeing is the memory loss, or things like difficulty with word finding. We had one lady that used the service who found after her brain injury that every time she wanted to say the word wardrobe, instead she said sausages. And actually that sounds quite funny, doesn't it, when you first hear it? And she thought it was quite funny when it first happened, but then it kept happening and she couldn't not do it. And then it becomes very difficult in terms of your communication with other people. Slowed thought processes and diminished understanding, so comprehension of information that's being given to you can take much longer and be hampered. And all of those things really make it very difficult to communicate effectively with those around you and when you're out in the community. Again, this will come back to the problem of isolation, because when you struggle to communicate, you do tend to withdraw from those social situations because it becomes embarrassing or too difficult or too tiring to go out there, keep putting yourself out there and doing it. We also see that people have problems with repetition, perseveration, fixating on a very particular task or a very particular subject matter. And that can be quite frustrating for those around them, their loved ones, because when you hear the same thing over and over and over again, it can become quite difficult to deal with. People after brain injury may also have problems in terms of reduced attention span, being very easily distracted, not being able to concentrate for long periods of time. That can be particularly bad if they are overstimulated, if they're in very noisy and chaotic environments. There are also visual spatial problems. Quite often people can't judge distances very well. That can be a problem when they're out crossing the road and they can't judge the speed that cars are moving at. So it puts them at risk for road safety difficulties. And we also see that people quite often lose some of their literacy and numeracy skills after brain injury, which makes everyday life very difficult if you can't fully read and comprehend the letters or the emails or the text messages or the information that you're being given. As I'm sure a lot of you work with people with neurodivergence, you'll be familiar with planning, organisation problems, and it's often no different for people after brain injury. Being able to plan, organise, problem solve, and make good, effective decisions is something that many people struggle with. And also perceptual difficulties. So real problems understanding other people's emotions, needs, point of view, and again, this makes kind of relationships quite difficult. it's really a horrible thing to see in terms of support networks breaking down, families breaking down. There is a really high risk of high rate of family breakdown after brain injury, and a lot of those relatives and family members I've spoken to cite the inability of their loved one to see their point of view or understand their needs, their emotions, as one of the key problems that cause that family to break down. And all of that again makes someone want to withdraw a little bit from everyday life and increases the risk of loneliness and isolation. And we know already that loneliness is a killer. And we know that if we can just entice someone to come and spend some time at our centre receiving peer support and valuable shared lived experience, then we're at least trying to help in that way to keep them connected with other people.
So can I interject again? I'm so sorry. I love to talk about music therapy. So one of the projects that we run at the centre that's part of our rehab timetable that Charlotte was talking about is music therapy. And when I first started at Headway Nottingham, I was fortunate to be the key staff member supporting alongside the music therapist, supporting all of our clients to make sure everyone could engage. And there was one gentleman that was attending, and he was very, very brash, incredibly difficult to get along with, very kind of aggressive and standoffish and unpleasant. And that was just kind of his personality. We wouldn't know him before his brain injury. He may always have been that way. I suspect his brain injury certainly exacerbated the way he projected himself to the world. But so he was participating in music therapy, and it was particularly resonant for him because he's a real music fan. He would carry his guitar with him everywhere. But over the course of kind of the fixed course of, I think it was 14 weeks, there really was in these sessions, in these 1 hour sessions once a week, there was a real difference we could see in this fella. He'd started out incredibly brash and disinterested in everyone else. And then over the process of the music therapy, so they kind of use like tonal matching and communicating emotion and understanding mood through the type of music that people are producing in the sessions. So you don't have to be able to play a musical instrument to do music therapy. You could play it like a guitar with your foot. That would be completely fine. But it's all about understanding what an emotion sounds like channeled through a musical instrument. So it's, you start off very quiet and soft, and then it gets louder and louder and bang, bang. It's like thunder. What does thunder sound like? And then bring it back down. And then alongside that, there's a process of talking amongst each other. What's been difficult this last few weeks? What's gone well? And going back to this gentleman, over the process of these 14 weeks, there was a real change in how he was able to interact with the other members of the group. Gone from being this brash and disinterested person, very individualistic, not at all interested in everyone around him, to towards the end, I remember distinctly, he kind of put his hand on the shoulder of a lady that was talking about something that had been difficult for her over the previous week. And he honestly said to her, "It's okay, we understand. We're all friends here," or something along those lines. And it sounds like such a small thing, but if that can translate into someone whose family is kind of on the brink of completely falling apart, if they can make just that one little change and that can be reinforced, and we can help to reinforce that, and we can work with the family over the phone as well to kind of check in, what a difference that could potentially make to someone's life. So again, it's always dependent on us finding money, isn't it, Charlotte, to run music therapy?
Absolutely.
But I hope that's something we'll be able to run with forever. Sorry for interjecting.
No, don't apologise. Yeah, as Rhiana said, the kinds of activities and rehab workshops we can offer is largely money dependent, as all small charities are struggling at the moment. So, but we are lucky enough to have a lovely gent that has paid for a year of music therapy for us. So we know we're all right for a little while. Moving on to kind of some of the behavioural problems we see most often after brain injury. Lack of insight. I've kind of touched on that already, but not only lack of insight in terms of other people, which it causes the strain in relationships and the family breakdown, but also lack of insight into themselves and their own ability or disability. So we see this quite often when people are applying for disability benefits, in that they'll go through the process and have the assessment and be asked if they can go out and work, and say, yeah, of course I can, I could go out to work tomorrow. Now, actually they couldn't, because just yesterday, having been a fully qualified mechanic before their brain injury, they tried to do the brakes on their car, got halfway through and realised actually no, they don't know how to put it all back together again, because they've lost some of the skills required to do that well. So lack of insight is a real problem, and something we do try and help with here at the centre. Mood swings, agitation, restlessness, aggression, irritability, quite often stemming from frustrations, especially as their insight does develop, and they realise a little bit more about how things have changed for them, and they find themselves struggling in everyday life. Frustration becomes a real problem for many people. Disinhibition is a big problem as well. So that can go from just displaying kind of socially inappropriate behaviour, perhaps not really having a filter. So if they look at someone and think something, they might say it without thought of how that might impact the person they're talking to or any future consequence. And we've
both been asked if we're pregnant, haven't we?
Oh yes, that's yes. Are you pregnant? No, just a little bit fat. So we get that quite often, and also sexual disinhibition. It can be a problem. So people after brain injury, as I said, might have lost their ability to understand what's socially appropriate behaviour, and that might be trying to touch someone inappropriately, not understanding that really isn't something you can do. And of course that leads to a real risk to them when they're out in the community, because in their safe space and their family they might have understanding, but the wider community won't necessarily be understanding about that. Inflexibility and obsessiveness can become a thing, and real rigidity of routines, and that can be quite debilitating. If any of you have worked with people with obsessive compulsive problems, it's similar to that. And also that self-centeredness, we've touched on it a couple of times already, but that kind of can only see and feel what's happening for themselves, kind of lacking the ability to understand that other people might need their care and attention, again contributing to kind of relationship difficulties and breakdown. The other problem, apathy, poor motivation, depression, anxiety. There's a massive crossover with mental health problems for people struggling to adjust after brain injury. And all of the things we've spoken about, again, kind of we come back to all of those things resulting in social isolation. And that's essentially what we exist to try and reverse, is the feelings of being completely alone. And people often, we try and amplify the voices of those we support, but quite often I think it's easier and better to hear from those people directly. So I've got a little video, hopefully it works.
Is it not working, Charlotte?
No,
Oh, it's working my end.
Oh, it's not. Yeah, it's not coming through.
I think we can click play on the video on the slide and it will work for everyone. So you have to click play for, yeah, I've never seen that before, but yeah, we can actually click play ourselves and then you can hear it.
Brilliant. Right, if you all just let me know if and when you've finished, I'll move on.
I think, yeah, the video's come to an end, Charlotte.
Brilliant. So, yeah, you heard from a load of our guys there about what brain injury feels like to them, and we're still, that video was made probably 10 years ago, and actually we're still supporting a good deal of those people you just saw, and that's one of the things we're most proud of in our service, particularly our day service, is that there's no time limit on the support we offer. So it's not a 12 weeks or a 6 months or a year. If that person needs support for the rest of their lives, as long as we're still here, we will give them that support for the rest of their lives. And that's what's so sadly lacking in so many kind of more clinical services aimed at supporting people with brain injury, is that it doesn't continue for as long as it's needed. So moving on to how you might be able to help someone manage the difficulties they're living with. Obviously, this is a bit of a quick stop shop on this subject because we haven't got enough time. We could go on and on and on and on. But when it comes down to memory loss, simple aids and prompts can really help. That's things like using the calendar and the alarms on smartphones. If someone's not so tech savvy, having a notebook in their pocket at all times and a little pen, wall planners, post-it notes stuck up around the house, you know, one on the back of the front door that says, please set your alarm before you leave. It sounds simplistic, but actually sometimes the most simple things work the best. Voice recordings can be really, really helpful, as long as permission is sought from anybody you're having a conversation with, but can be really helpful for them to keep hold of and play back if they forget parts of conversations they've had, particularly when they're working with professionals, doctors, social workers, you know, that kind of thing. The symptoms of brain injury, as I've mentioned before, can get worse, particularly if someone's stressed, overstimulated, tired. So wherever you have the opportunity to manage the environment you're in with the person you're working with that has the brain injury, do so. Think about overstimulation and trying to reduce the amount of noise and chaos that's going on around you as you're interacting with them. Be really open and clear when you communicate. Use simple language and don't use jargon. Just try and keep things really simple and ask them about what works best for them. Everyone will manage things slightly differently and will have a favourite type of communication. So ask, always ask. When people are struggling with fatigue, they usually have a pattern when their fatigue is worse, or they know what can trigger it. So again, ask and talk to them about when they feel most tired and when they feel least tired. And if you can organise to meet with them and have your conversations at a time when they are feeling their brightest, that will only benefit everyone involved. The most important thing is to ask and to listen. Every brain injury is individual, and each person with a brain injury will have their own preferences and their own coping strategies and techniques they've built and used and they know that work. So if you're unsure, always ask. And whilst you can always get in touch with us here at Headway Nottingham, there's also a helpline, a national helpline run by our national colleagues, and they've got it's nurse-led, and they've got some great helpers on the other end of the phone to talk to professionals and those with brain injuries if it's required. Oh, there we go. What more can you do? You can learn more about brain injury to foster a really supportive environment. You're taking the first step. You're doing that today. If you don't already know loads about brain injury, then you're trying to remedy that today. So thank you. Remember to prompt the use of aids for memory and routine where it's needed. Things we've spoken about before. Be open and honest with the people you're working with. Provide praise and reassurance, constructive suggestions. You know, be aware that, you know, what people need is constructive reassurance rather than judgment. Offer practical support wherever you can. Ask them what support they need. It's really important that you don't just assume that you should help or step in. Ask if they need help, or you know, we don't want to disempower anyone, so they should be given the opportunity to give things a go before you step in to help. but avoid overloading the person you're working with lots of information or direction at any one time, because they can often need more time to process and comprehend information. You need to be aware of that in your dealings with them, allowing time, enough time for that person to really understand what you've been talking about, and to have allowed them perhaps to record any meetings if you don't mind, or use those memory prompts to make sure they've got something to take away with them. We always ask people to be understanding wherever possible and to make allowances wherever it's reasonable to do so. But that doesn't mean you shouldn't challenge behaviour that is challenging. So when you do that, you need to make sure you have their full attention, and you need to do it at the time, because of the memory problems that people have. If a behaviour has caused difficulties that you need to discuss with them, and you're doing it a week or so down the line, that won't necessarily work, because they might have forgotten the interaction. They won't be able to recall what happened. So it's always good to try and address it as soon as possible. Avoid sarcasm or ambiguous speech. That can be really difficult for people after brain injury, and all sorts of different neurodivergence, actually. We want to avoid subtleties usually, and be quite direct, and as far as possible maintain the same sort of routine during any interactions and appointments. Once you've got it figured out, the best way to work with this person and what works for them, try and keep it similar at each time you meet them, so that it's better for everybody involved. Always remember that difficulties can fluctuate, and disability can fluctuate. Now, people will often tell us and talk to us about the fact that they were really good. They felt really good one day and they had a brilliant meeting with so and so, but the meeting they had a few days later was awful. And they can feel, because of the fluctuating nature of their difficulties, they can feel like they're judged to be faking it, when one time it was okay and the next time it wasn't. So we try and always remember that disability can fluctuate for people with brain injury. Providing written reminders of conversations for them to take away with them, to reflect on, so that they can refer back to it, is always really useful. And recapping when you're going into a second interaction, recapping so that you can the last one, so that they can try and remember where you left off last time. Remember about the overstimulation and try and reduce noise and distraction. And most of all, just remember to ask, because the person you're working with will probably know best how you can work successfully with them. And I think, oh, that was timed reasonably well. I think we're at the end.
Oh, thank you, Charlotte and Rhiana. Yeah, they're really interesting. Thank you for that. And we've got a few questions, but if anyone has got any more questions that they want to just pop in the chat box, we will put these to Rhiana and Charlotte now. So the first one is asking, is Headway still within Derbyshire at Clay Cross Hospital?
So there is a Headway Derby there. I think they do some hospital work, but I can't remember exactly which hospitals and how often. But you can find their details if you Google Headway Derby. You will find their website and contact details. So I would suggest you get in touch with them directly to ask about exactly where they're operating and what services they have.
Thank you. The next question asks, does Headway Nottingham have any links with local prisons? for supporting prisoners with brain injury and also upskilling prison staff regarding brain injury?
No, we don't at the moment. I know that our national charity are doing quite a lot of work with prisons at the moment, but we haven't kind of got those links ourselves at a local level. Again, it's something we've talked about and spoken about. The incidence of brain injury among the prison population is extremely high, and it's something we'd like to do and work more on. But as is always the case, we need money, time and more staff. So yeah, we haven't got them at the moment, but do talk to the national charity because I think they have more than we do.
We've had a couple of inquiries from prisons actually over the last over the last few months, so I would like to think that's encouraging. Perhaps there's a better understanding of the fact that there's a disproportionate amount of brain injury amongst the prison population. They tend to, I don't know why, get to the point of inquiring and then disappearing again when they've had a reply. So I suspect that's, you know, far too much work to do. So much room for improvement in terms of awareness raising and training and stuff there, but we'll get there, won't we?
Thank you. The next question asks, how would I refer someone into Headway, and are there any inclusion or exclusion criterias?
So in terms of how you refer, we will accept a professional referral from you guys if you're working with someone, but we can also accept self-referrals too, or a carer referral. You can find all that information on our website, which is headwaynottingham.org.uk. Quite a short form just to fill in the first instance for a referral. There are some criteria, they're included on the form. So we are an 18+ service. We don't work with younger people. The person you're referring needs to live within the Nottinghamshire border. There are occasions where we might step outside the Nottinghamshire border, particularly around the edges, where someone might prefer to come into Nottingham, for instance, rather than go to Derby. But they have to be aware that they would have to self-fund any attendance then, because they wouldn't qualify for help through adult social care, because we don't have contracts with Derbyshire or you know, outside of the Nottinghamshire area. And there are a few other bits about risk. So each referral we get is risk assessed, because we're offering a group environment. The person being referred needs to be able to work reasonably well in a group environment, which not everyone does. And if they have any difficulties with aggression and violence, we would ask that they have been managed reasonably well for 6 months before they come into our group environment. But we would talk to you individually. If you're ever unsure about whether someone fits the criteria, just give us a call and we'll be happy to talk through it with you.
There's the option of support workers attending with someone as well, isn't there, if someone needs that one-to-one support?
Oh, thank you. Yes, the Headway website's just been put in the chat box, so people can still access this after the webinar's finished, but we'll also pop it in our follow-up email as well, so people have access to that. The next question asks, how would you manage sexualised behaviour for people with brain injury?
So it's a really difficult one, and each individual we work with responds to different kinds of interaction and challenge about their behaviour. So we will always try and gather as much information as possible before that person comes to spend time at our centre. And as I said, each individual will be risk assessed before they come and spend time with us. Essentially, we always challenge inappropriate behaviour. So if we are aware that, as we should be, if we've collected the right information, that somebody might struggle in this area, we will probably give a lot more thought to the kinds of activities they're taking part in at the centre, who they're kind of sitting with and interacting with, and how much supervision we're giving in those environments. But we always challenge. So if somebody says or does something that's sexually inappropriate, we will challenge that, and we try and do it in a way that lets them know that we understand that it's something they're struggling with, and that they need help to understand how to tackle the problem. So as I said, each person, as we get to know them, we work out how well they respond to what kind of challenge. So it is always a little bit as to how well we manage that interaction and that challenge. But usually full kind of discussion about why what they did was inappropriate, how it made the other person or people feel, and bringing them back to kind of the repetition of what's appropriate in the service, what's socially appropriate behaviour. So a lot of what we do is focused on repetition. You do have to keep saying it, keep saying it, keep saying it.
And I suppose you could provide prompts for someone as well, couldn't you? Just kind of reinforcing what's been said, but it does always come back to that, the immediacy of challenging the behaviour and sympathetically approaching it, but having kind of a strength and a determination in the way that you're delivering the information. It's a hard one, isn't it? And it feels awkward as well, shouldn't it? Well, and it shouldn't. It's a very normal and reasonable thing to be challenging, but it can, by the nature of it, it can feel quite awkward. Yeah.
Oh, thank you for that. The next question asks, are you aware of any further support services available for an individual who struggles in a group setting?
So in terms of support, it might be that person would be primed to join our online 8-week brain injury course, Living Well with Brain Injury it's called. So if they struggle in the group setting, if they've got the technology and the ability to join an online Teams meeting once a week, that might be an option for them. In terms of further services other than our own that are brain injury specialised, no, not really, I'm afraid. I don't know of any others. We are the only long-term brain injury specialised support service operating in Nottinghamshire, and it's sadly lacking. You know, we haven't got much competition, which is lovely for us, I suppose, but not so lovely for the amount of people that might need support that we can't quite reach.
Thank you. The next question is saying, I've heard about smartwatches being helpful for some people with dementia. Do you have any experience of smartwatches also being helpful for people following a brain injury?
Yes, so they can be, and we do have a few clients that use our service that absolutely rely on their smartwatches, you know, in connection with their smartphones, particularly for medication reminders, and you know, those different points in the day where they've got to do something in particular. So yes, I think there is definitely scope for a smartwatch to be really beneficial. There are lots of research. There is lots of research going on at the moment surrounding this particular subject around technology and how it can be used to aid recovery after brain injury. We're involved in some of that research ourselves. So it's definitely something, I think, a marketplace that is going to be, you know, explored further in the years to come.
Thank you. There's another question around support for people in prisons that's been posted again, just around is any support for people in prison. But I think you sort of answered that before in a previous question. But in the chat box, somebody's put something in there around having had great support from somebody from Lincoln Headway who'd arranged to visit referrals that have been made before release, and offers lots of support, and said it's a brilliant service. So there's obviously some work going on within prison services, isn't there?
Yeah, there definitely is work going on, and each headway in each different area will have their own different levels of service. So you'll find some massive regional headways do all sorts of things, and then there are some really tiny ones, obviously, that that can't match and kind of provide all the services we wish we could. So yes, if there are some prisons, some headways in some prisons up and down the country, and if you're at all unsure about that, I would suggest you contact the national charity, who should be able to point you in the right direction.
Thank you. And just also in the chat, somebody's put a comment on there just thanking Headway for the support that they received when they received a brain injury. So just to go back and have a look through the comments that people have looked up, entered afterwards as well. There is another question here, and it says, can an individual present with new behaviours?
Do you mean kind of further down the line after brain injury, or do you mean kind of immediately post injury?
I'm not sure from the question. The way I was reading it, I was thinking
years later.
Yeah,
develop later.
Yeah. Oh, okay. Lovely.
Yes. It's less common. Usually the kind of new behaviours come to the fore in the first 6 months or so after brain injury. But it's not unheard of for a new behaviour to suddenly appear some years later. Although when that happens, and we have seen it once or twice, when that happens, we would always advise that they go back and seek medical advice, because it could be that a new behaviour is being caused by something completely separate that's going on in terms of their health, or it could be an exacerbation of problems associated with their brain injury. So if a really new behaviour suddenly rears its head, always advise that they go and get some medical help from GP, or if they're still under a consultant, a neuroconsultant, to go to them.
I suppose it could be an indicator of something socially changing, or some kind of instability in the day-to-day. That's the kind of thing that our support workers would kind of probably try and information gather a bit more, see if they can build up a bit of context around that. That's often kind of where some of our safeguarding concerns that we report, it's how we first discover them, isn't it? Through sort of observing the behaviours. Interesting.
Thank you both. That's the end of our questions then. So yeah, thank you both for coming and presenting for the learning series, and all the information and expertise that you've shared. And we'll send thank you to everyone for attending and for your comments and contributions and questions as well.